Hey, we're going to begin the Gemara. Today's daf, Be'ezus Hashem, is Masechta Baba Basra, daf Zayin, number 7. And we're going to start from daf Vav Amud Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. A nice, straightforward Gemara, and stories about Rav Chama. Okay, here we go. And his psakim. The Gemara says like this, a story. Hani b'nei Beitrei. There were 2 people. The Havadori, they lived. Chad Havadori Elois. One lived on the top floor. Chad Havadori Tatoi. And one lived on the bottom floor. And what happened was, so they had a 2-family house. And Itve Tatoi. What happened was that the land underneath the one living on the bottom floor started to sink. So the foundation of the property, the foundation of the building started to sink. So that the roof of the top guy, his roof, which is the floor of the top guy, started getting lower and lower. So the bottom guy had very little room to, get into his house. In other words, maybe his floor to ceiling height was originally 10 foot. Now it's like 7 foot. So he's seeing that this building is sinking into the ground. And if he lets it go any further, he's not going to have any building left. He's not going to have a place to live. So Amalei Tatoy Leiloi. So the guy on the bottom floor said to the guy on the top floor, Tov and Ivne, let us build it. Let us chip in and build a new building. Amalei. So the guy on the top floor responded, I don't have a problem. Ano Shapiko de Erna. I'm living fine. I'm living on the top floor and there's no problem over there. You go to Daf Zayin Amud Aleph. Amalei. So realizing that the guy on the bottom floor says, I'm gonna take the responsibility of building the new building. Let me demolish the house and rebuild it again. And I'll build 2 floors. Amalei. So the other one answered, I have no place where to live. When you're going to be doing the demolition and rebuilding, I have no place to live. Amalei. So the person answered, I'm going to rent you a new spot where you can live. Right? I'm going to rent you a new spot where you can live. Amalei loy tarachna. I don't want to be bothered with this. Hi, Lewis. We just began. Hold on. Let me just repeat the story. Hi, Steve. And Lewis, we just began. And we're on Daf Zayin Amud Aleph. Just let me tell you the story about what we're discussing. We have a 2-floor house which started to sink into the ground. So the guy who's on the first floor, who originally had, let's say, a 10-foot ceiling, now because the building is sinking, he has now a 7-foot ceiling. So he told the guy on the top floor, let's knock the house down and rebuild a new house. So the guy on the top floor said, I don't have a problem. My top floor apartment is still good. So the guy on the bottom floor said, okay, I'm going to knock the whole building down and pay for a new building. So the other person on the top floor said, but where am I going to live? I have no place to live. So the guy on the top floor said, during the demolition process and the rebuilding process, I'm going to rent you a place to live. The guy on the top floor said, don't bother me. I don't want to be bothered moving and moving back. It's not appealing to me. I have a good idea for you. If you need to get into your ground floor apartment, get on your stomach and go into the apartment. And when you want to leave, you get on your stomach and go out of the apartment. Basically, he's saying, I'm not moving. So who's in the right over here? So Amar Rav Chama, and this is the important part. Rav Chama says, Bedina Kama Akev. The guy on the upstairs floor could with complete he could completely block and say, I don't want to chip in. That's what he has the right to do that. That's his right. Okay. So now that was Rav Chama's opinion. So Vahani Mili, the only time he can stop this whole rebuilding of the building is the Leimotek Shur Lamata Masora. If the bottom floor roof, the beams did not reach less than 10 tfachim. So he still has an apartment to live, albeit he had a 10-foot ceiling, now it's only 7 foot. That's fine. Avamotek Shura Lamata Masora, if it came so low, the building sunk so much that it's now less than 10 tfachim, so we can say, in other words, encroaching, you who living on the top floor are now encroaching into my property, my apartment, because the building is sinking. The top floor is now sinking into the bottom floor, and the bottom floor really doesn't have an apartment that's high 10 tfachim. So therefore, if that's the case, then he can force the top floor to move, and he can take on the responsibility of demolishing and rebuilding the house. Bahani Mili, this was only said Deloy As Negabe Hadodi. If they had no conditions met when they first bought the house. When they first bought the two-family house, one took the bottom floor, and one took the top floor. Hi, Alan. We're on Daf Zayin Amud Aleph, and we're getting up to another story, getting towards the first third of the page. But anyway, Avala Asne Gabe Ahadodi. If they had a condition that if something like this would happen, that the building will sink, then the bottom floor guy can say to the guy who's on the top, move Safsri Ubani, and he can demolish and rebuild. So now, when they made a condition that if something like this would happen, the bottom floor could force the guy on the top floor to move, right? How much does the building have to sink for him to force the top guy out? I mean, a quarter of an inch or nothing. Amrle Rabbanan Kamed Rabba Mishmeid Mazut Braid Rav Nachman Dam Mishmeid Rav Nachman Aisha Shaninu Ruma Kachatzi Arkev Kachatzi Rachbai. In other words, I'm sorry. How much does he have to rebuild the house to make it? What is the appropriate? What the Gemara's question is: what is the appropriate height of a building? What is the appropriate height of ceiling? That's the question. So in other words, how much does the upper floor go into the bottom floor that you can force the rebuild? That's the question. So Rab Nachman said it's when somebody, it's like the bottom line is that the height of a house, of the height of apartment, should be half the length and half the width. So suppose if the width is 10 feet and the length is 20 feet, so half the length is 10 and half the width is 5 feet. So then the height of the ceiling should be 15 feet. And that's Rashi says, because it's similar to when a person accepted on himself to build his friend a house. So how high does the house have to be? It has to be half the length and half the width, just like the Heichel, like the Beis Hamikdash. The length was 40 amos and the width was 20 amos. So half the length and half, so that's 40 plus 20 is 60. So guess what? The height was 30. So that's the way, that's how you rebuild a house, appropriate measures. So that's very high. Rabba said, don't listen. Don't hang your hat, basically, on the words of Rab Nachman, and don't extend what Rab Nachman said. Rab Nachman said, the normal way to build a house, ki dayare anasher, where normal people can live. And normal people, a high ceiling doesn't have to be so cathedral. It can be a 9-foot ceiling. That's fine. The kama, and how much? So the height of the ceiling could be that you could bring in a long reed, like a long bamboo, and then swing it in all directions, and it's not going to hit the wall or the ceiling. So it doesn't mean that it's cathedral, but it doesn't mean that it's so low. That was the story with the two people living with each other. And now Gemara brings a new story. Ahu Gavra, there was this person, there was this person that built a wall that blocked the windows of his friend. So a guy, like in Borough Park, he built a wall that blocked the window of his friend. Amalei, so the friend said, you're making it too dark in my house. And those days, a window was not just for light, it was for air and everything else. Amalei, don't worry about that. I will close up this window and build your window on a little bit higher than the one that you have. So therefore, my wall doesn't extend as high as your house. So therefore, I'm gonna not close up this window and build you another window that's on more higher up, so you'll still have light and air coming in. Amalei, so he said, Koma artli le lashisai. I guess when you're going to open new windows, you're basically doing construction, and you're going to be shaking my wall. You're going to be shaking my wall without any underpinning, basically, and something could happen. So I don't like that idea. Amalei. So the guy said, this guy was in construction, said to his neighbor, okay, so Serena lach lashisai. I'm going to knock the whole wall down, aduchte the kave, until where the window is. Ubanina le bavdina le kave bevinyona le'el me'shisai. And I'm going to build you a new part of the wall, and then build a window on top. So in other words, wherever you had the window previously, I'm knocking the wall down and that part, and then I'm going to rebuild that part of the wall with new bricks, and then put a new window on top. Amalei ashisa mitatoya atika u'mel'el chadata lo'ikama. You have an old wall on the bottom and a new wall on the top. That's not going to last. Your idea is very kind, but I don't like that idea, because it's not going to be construction sound. It's not going to be a good wall. Amalei, so the friend said, I'm going to knock the whole wall down, right? And I'm going to build you a brand new wall, and I'm going to make you a new window in there. So you're going to open up that part of your house, knock the whole wall down, and build you a brand new wall. Amalei, so what's going to happen? The guy said, I don't like that idea either. You're going to have one new wall, and the rest of the house is going to have old walls. That's not going to last. For some reason, it's not going to match up either. Amalei. So the guy said, okay, you took me till the end. I'll demolish your entire house. And I'm going to build you a brand new house, and with a brand new windows. Amalei. So the guy said, okay, that's a good idea, but Leslie, I have no place where to live. You're offering to knock my whole house down, but where am I going to live? Amalei. So the guy said, I'm going to rent you a new place to live. Amalei. So the other person says, Loi tarachna. I don't want to be bothered with moving. So again, this guy is being such a pain that he's so upset that his friend built a wall that blocks his window. So who's in the right here? This guy who built the wall is very generous. He offered him to build a brand new house. Rav Chama bidin koma akev. The guy whose window got blocked is in the right over here. That's what Rav Chama said. So Rav Chama is on the person that was just living by himself, minding his own business, only to find that somebody's trying to do something to make his living quarters a little bit uncomfortable. He has a right to prevent the other guy to amend the situation. Says the Gemara Hainahach, these two cases that we discussed tonight are the same case. Rav Chana gives the right to that person. V'hatu lamali. Why did the Gemara bring down the second case of the guy whose window got blocked with a wall? What is that? What's the chiddush of that case? So and there is a novelty. Even the guy, he only used that house whose window got blocked. He used it for straw or for storage for wood. He didn't really use that house. So he's all complaining and being pedantic about that window. He's making life difficult for the guy that's building a wall. Still, Rav Chama said that he's in the right, and he could stop the guy from building the wall. Says the Gemara another story. Hani Beitrei, there was these two people. Hani Beitrei Achi, there were two brothers. The Palga Bahade Adadi. They divided their father's assets. Chad Motye Asplida. One took the house, okay? V'chad Motye Tarbitza. One took the garden. So imagine a house, and in front of it is a beautiful garden. Aza Ahu de Matye Tarbitza. The one that took the garden, he decided, V'kabona Shisa Pumad Asplida. He started building a wall all around the garden, blocking light going into the house, right? The Asplida may be like a fancy house. or a hall. Amalei, so the brother who's now looking at a wall, he says, "Come up with a light. You're making it dark in my house." Amalei. So the person the brother that got the garden, he says, "But didika begena, I'm building it in my garden. What do you care?" So once again, who do you think is right over here? Amar Abchama bedin kamarle. The guy that's building the wall, the garden wall, he's in the right over here. So that's it. He's in the right over here because he this Hezek Riyah. He doesn't want his brother looking into his garden, so he has a right to build that wall and block the light going into his brother's house. Amalei Ravina Ravashi. So Ravina said to Ravashi, Ma'ishna Mahaditanya, why is this any different that we learned in a Brisa? Shnei Achim Shecholmi, two brothers that divided up their father's assets. Echad mehem notol stei cherem. One took the vineyard. The echad mehem notol stei lavon, and one took the the grain field. Okay, so normally if someone has a vineyard, he should be backing away from the person who has a grain field, because when you put your vineyard, your grapevines too close to the border, it could interfere with the grain and making it klai hakerem, right? So therefore, we require the kerem, which is considered the damager, to back away from the border if he's next to a grain field. But here you have two brothers who one took the vineyard and one took the grain field. Actually the guy who has the grain field, he's the one that has to back up and allow the balakerem to plant up into his border. So even though the one that's doing the damage is the Baal HaKerem, the one that's being damaged is the Stei 11. We force the Stei 11 to back away so as not to get damaged. So why do we say over here? Why did we say over here that Rav Chama said bedin kamaleh? He has a right to do that. Wait a second. Rav Chama should be on the one of who's being damaged, which is the guy who in the garden, because he's claiming that he doesn't want his brother to look into his garden. Let him back his wall so it's not blocking the light going into the brother that took the house. Amalei, so the answer is Hasam the Alir Lahadadi. There they paid each other off. So therefore, by the Kerem and the Stei Lavan, it was a prearranged agreement where the Stei Lavan is going to back away. But here it wasn't a prearranged agreement. They split equally their property. So the Gemara asks back, what do you mean? Here they split evenly? How do you have it? How do you call that an even split? One gets the house and one gets the garden in front of the house. Are we dealing with fools? The high shakel asplida, one's going to take the house. The high shakel tarbitza, one's going to take the garden. They didn't make any previous arrangement or pay each other off. Obviously, since this one is getting much less than the other, so how could the one that's getting much less than the other, how could he have not gotten a side payment to accommodate the brother that got the house? And if he did get a side payment, then he should not be allowed to build a wall that blocks the view of the house, that blocks the light going into the house. Amalei. So he answered back, maybe he got a payment because he got paid, the other brother got paid half the value of the beams, the bricks, and the other material that go into building the house. He didn't get paid for airspace. And in other words, we still give the right to the garden, the one that's building the garden, since he didn't get paid off. He has a right to build a wall that almost blocks the light of his brother who took the house. So the Gemara asks a question: why can't the brother who got the house say like this? If you're going to build a wall that blocks the light to the house, then I'm not even getting a house. I'm getting a dungeon. Let the brother say who got the house, Mikara aspilida plagtili. In the beginning, I got a house. Now you're making it into a dungeon. And that wasn't part of the Yerusha agreement. So you're being unfair by building that wall that's blocking the light of the house. It makes almost the house unusable. Answers the Gemara, you can't complain that. Rav Shimi Barashi says, Shmo ba'alma palagle. You still did get something. You got the name. You got the house. It's not called a dungeon. You're calling it a dungeon, but really it's called a house. Milay Tanya, didn't we have a brisa? A guy says, I'm selling you a base core. A base core is a field that can make a huge amount of wheat. Even if it only can make half that amount, because it's called a base core. Okay, he sold him a field that's called a base core. Base core. It's called a base core. Another example: if I say to somebody, I'm selling you a orchard. Even if it has no pomegranates in there, it's still you bought it and it's called an orchard. Maybe it's not the orchard that you thought, but that's it. The sale is valid. Because when you sold it, that's what it was called. And if it was called an orchard, I'm selling you a vineyard. Even though if it doesn't have vines in there, you get it. It's called kerem. It was at one time called a kerem. It's yours. So the same thing over here. When they split, when the two brothers split, and one guy got the garden and one got the house, at the time of the split, it was called a house. Now the brother's saying, "Oh, but you're turning my house into a dungeon by building a wall on your garden that's blocking the light." But it's still you don't have enough of a claim to invalidate the division, the split. So the Gemara says, "Midami hasam matzi amalei l'moichalel keach." By the cases that you said that shloi mochaloi el shma, sometimes you sell things and by name it's called something, even though it falls short, because the seller could tell a purchaser, "Shma zabin alach, I sold you a name." Hacha matzi amalei, but here the brother that got the house could say, I agree to this split of the inheritance that you're going to allow me to use our father's house, the of Hassan, the way our father used to live in that house, and the way our father used to live in that house was without obstruction. So you have no right to put up an obstruction over there. They answered back to him, Amr le Maryanika Makashisha B'dreid Rav Chizda the Ravashi. Maryanika and Maryanika, which is the oldest son of Ravashi, and Makashisha is the youngest son of Ravashi, youngest son of Rav Chizda, said to Ravashi, leave it as it way. Herdoi l'tamei. Rav Chama is from Nerdoi, and he goes like the Shita of Shmuel, who was also from the city of Nerdoi. A split is final. There's no complaints anymore. Brothers that agreed to split up the inheritance, when two brothers split, and one took the north part of the field, and one took the south of the field, and the father used to be able to go freely from one side or the other one can say, "Oh, I'm also allowed to now go." He can't complain if one builds a wall to block the window of somebody, or whatever. If one took a house and the courtyard, and the other brother took the second floor, he can't put his ladder in the courtyard of this to go up to his roof. Each one can block. A split is a split, and whatever the father used to do does not automatically transfer over, that the kids can now use it the way the father was using it in his lifetime. A split is a complete split down the middle, as if they don't know each other. Rava disagrees. Yesh lehem. They do have a right. A brother split. So if the father, if father had a window in a certain area, one of the others cannot build a wall and block that area. But Rav Chama was very strict on that. He said you could. One a little bit more. Another story. There was this star of Yosoimim that their father lent somebody money, and then they went to collect, and the guy said, "Hey, here's my receipt. I paid your dad." You don't collect from this star, but you don't rip it up either. Agbu loy magbina lay. You don't collect from the shtar the nafik taver lay because the guy pulled out a receipt that he paid it. Mikra loy karina lay. You don't rip it up the shtar. The chigadli yisami when these offerings get older. Dilma maisirayu myraluhu. Maybe they'll bring proof to show that the receipt was a forged receipt and the guy really owes the money. All these mentioned things about Rav Chama. What's the halacha? Amalei. So Ravina answered, "Bakule hilchas Rav Chama." We always pass like Rav Chama. The Baal Matavra accept this case that I told you about the receipt. We don't assume that the receipt is forged. People don't forge receipts, so we believe this receipt is true. And you would rip up the loan document so to not allow the Yisraelim to collect when they get older. In this also the halacha is like Rab Chama. The Isa the Tavri Ma'al Yehu he boile la puke b'chayaviyim midloya puke shmamen as a yufihu. The reason is that if this loan was indeed paid up, then why didn't the guy pull out the receipt when the father was alive? When the father was alive and came collecting, there was no receipt. He didn't pay, but he didn't show the receipt. Now that the father died and the kids are coming there, all of a sudden this guy pulls out a receipt. It must be that it might be a false receipt. So we allow the Yisraelim to keep the loan document because maybe when they get older, they're able to prove that the receipt was forged. New Mishnah, another minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then we'll stop. If you live in a city, you have to build a gate and a door. You have to chip in to build a gate and a door for the courtyard. If the people live in a common courtyard, then they have to all chip in. Everybody who has who's living in that courtyard has to chip in. So the Gemara says, Reb Shimon Gamliel says, not every courtyard needs a fence or an opening or a gate to come in. Not everybody has to chip in. We always have this problem in the summertime in the bungalow where people want to buy something and chip in for something. And some people complain that we don't really need it. New thing. If you live in a city, everybody has to chip in to build a wall, a double door, and a briach and a cross beam lock. Not every city gets a wall. Not everybody. It's not appropriate. You can't force the issue to all the people living in the city to build a wall. How long does a person have to be in the city? And he's considered like an inhabitant that he's required to pay the tax of the city and what the assessments. So Yud Beis Chodesh, you have to live there 12 months, then you have to start paying the assessment. But if you bought a house, then you're like the person living in the city right away, and you have to chip in for the assessments. So the Gemara says we're going to end off 1 more minute and then we'll stop. Remember the Beis Shar Mal Yusahi. Do you want to say that having a gate in front of a courtyard is a good idea? There was this chassid Eliyahu to have a mishtoi badei. Eliyahu Novi would come speak to him. Avad Beishar v'sula mishtoi badei. They made a courtyard. They made a gate. Let's say a gate blocking people from entering the courtyard. And Eliyahu did not want to visit this chassid who lived in that courtyard. Why? Because Rashi says, because poor people who are crying cannot get into the courtyard to come around collect. So it's too strict. So the answer is, the Gemara says, Loi kasha, ha megavoy, ha mebraroi. If they make the gate from outside the chotzer, that's not so good because the door of the chotzer is closed and the poor person's screaming and nobody hears him. But if you could enter the courtyard a little bit, and then you find the door, so then the ani can claim the ani who comes there will be heard, and somebody who hears him will open the door for the courtyard. Okay, we're going to stop right over here, but the Gemara gives another teretz over here. What's the problem of building a door blocking poor people from entering the courtyard?